So last night, the state of downtown Kansas City took place, and here to talk to us about that is the mayor of Kansas City, Quinton on 95.7 FM KCMO. We're streaming, of course, on the iHeart, the TuneIn apps, or the KCMO Talk Radio app as well. And we will get the mayor on here momentarily. Okay, here he is. So I want to start off with downtown Kansas City. Obviously, there's a lot going on down there. So let's welcome in the mayor. Mr. Mayor, good morning. So last night, State of Downtown KC, I know you said a few words. What was the purpose of that event? What do you guys try to achieve on that event last night?
Well, it's talk about the $4.3 billion of projects that are in the pipeline or proposed in downtown Kansas City. You know, we hear a lot about what's not working, perhaps, but what we're seeing every day on the ground in KCMO is that people are investing, investors from all around the country. This was a group, I believe, out of California, that said, yeah, we see great promise here, 27-story new apartment.
Ooh, that cell phone's a little spotty. You got us, Mr. Mayor?
There's a four-legged stool. Can you hear me all right now?
Yes, you're good now.
Okay. There's a four-legged stool for how a city works. Mm-hmm. It is infrastructure, investment, education, and public safety. I think on the infrastructure and investment side, we are incredibly strong. We need to make sure we're working on the education and safety side of all of it.
Okay, so on that note then, I know, $800,000 I saw there's going to be a new development there, 25 stories, mixed use, as I understand it. So, with those projects, though, what is the city providing in abatements on things of that nature?
You know, they have not made a request yet on the abatement award, and that's going to be an ongoing conversation that we have. For us, I think what's most important is that we make sure that we are being as responsible as possible with the taxpayers. It does nobody any good to have a completely vacant downtown Kansas City. However, it does do good for us to make sure that we're still generating revenues for our public school district, for our city, for all the other resources we have. But I think on the balance in Kansas City, we usually get it right. If you compare us to other regions around this country, and I know you get to all of them, we have a downtown where people are moving in, where our census numbers are good, where there's still business investment, where people still have jobs. I would much rather have that than an alternative.
Now, speaking of things downtown, I know that Power and Light is going to get a $10 million facelift here that's going to be happening in the months and next couple of years. I guess it'll start sometime in early 2025. But we also know that this is an operation that is funded by the taxpayer. Power and Light is not a self-sustaining entity. So why is this a good investment for the taxpayer of Kansas City?
So the additional $10 million is going to be privately funded by the Cordish companies. They're doing that themselves to make sure that an area that we've largely called Kansas City's living room, that KC Live district that has tens of thousands of people watching during soccer games and beyond, continues to be a place that people want to be. We get young people from all around the region who are coming to hang out, spending money, getting to know a positive Kansas City. And I will note, a well-secured environment. They have private security there. They work well with off-duty KCPD. It is a good spot of the city, and it's where we're continuing to build more residential towers. On the question of why subsidize it all, now, in part, that decision was made by my predecessors 18 years ago, so we're living with it. But as somebody right now, and sorry for spotty reception, I'm en route to a thing, but somebody right now who's looking at downtown Kansas City and sees about 5 new multi-story buildings, this is good for Kansas City. This brings in earnings tax revenues, real estate taxes. It brings in a lot of activity for our city that allows us to have a strong core to our region. Anybody who is listening this morning in the Northland, on the east side, more revenue coming to Kansas City, more people coming to Kansas City helps all of us. It helps us resurface our roads. It helps us do all the necessary work. And I think it's good for KC long term. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I mean, the deal was set up years ago. You're right about that. And the city will continue to subsidize it based on the contract. So Cordish will invest the $10 million. Of course, that's the company that owns a lot of the big buildings downtown, or at least a lot of the popular buildings downtown. Now, that being said, I saw something, and I don't know where this number comes from. And listen, I want as many people to go downtown and make the city money and give you guys tax revenues as possible. But I saw that the estimates were 6 million people going through Power and Light District annually. I mean, that seems insane to me, Mr. Mayor. That's 17,000 people a day. Please explain to me how we get these numbers.
Now, look, I don't play the game of the numbers either. I actually had a conversation not long ago with the mayor of New Orleans, And I said, what's your tourism like? And she said, oh, we're recovering. We're at about 19 million. And I kind of thought in my head, well, I know, right? But compared to Kansas City, which estimates much higher than that, 24, 25, I do think we probably need to have some consistency in how we measure these metrics, because it does seem like, I don't know if it's people who drive by an area, I don't know if it's catchment, I don't know if there's some other form of estimation, but I'm with you in the sense that let's get the real numbers, see what we're generating, see what work we can do to improve it long term. And I think that will do good for Kansas City.
Well, I promise you, if you were getting 6 million people through Power and Light a year, you wouldn't be subsidizing it anymore at this point. I mean, the math doesn't add up.
I think that is a very, very fair point. And I think that speaks to another issue sometimes. And this isn't just a downtown Kansas City economic development thing. I mean, you read these stories, you have guests on, whether it is data centers, distribution centers, battery plants, big towers downtown. Every developer says basically that we're going to make $1 gajillion. Everything makes sense. Everything balances out. And you're kind of like, well, wait a minute. If it was such a profitable venture, why is there government investment at all? I mean, I think there needs to be a better balance on, right, what are we really looking at long term? I think a lot of these things are all good. Everything I listed is a good thing. But I think ultimately we need to figure out how to do that work better. All
right, let me ask you, too, now. You mentioned kind of the 4 pillars of, improving a city. You mentioned education. Well, Kansas City Public Schools have finalized a ballot language for a $470 million bond. This came down yesterday, and, of course, this will increase property taxes for KCMO residents. I think the estimates were about $200 on the property tax front for a $200,000 home. So this is a pretty big increase in property taxes if the voters move ahead with this coming up in April. Would you vote for this thing right now?
I would. There is nothing more important in Kansas City than improving our schools long term. And I understand that safety and every other issue is important, but at the core of the problem, the foundation of the problem, the reason so many people move to Lee Summit and Johnson County and the Northland is for better schools for their kids and their families. I mean, that is what you see ultimately as the issue. And that's a way that we make sure that we have preteens and adolescents and others who have something to do, that are feeling like their life is valuable. And so I do think that this investment in schools, while very healthy, while certainly the thing that you wouldn't want to have to come after these huge property tax increases throughout our region, but it is something that is that important for the people of Kansas City. So my view is that this is something that I think will ultimately be supported by the voters. I think it's going to take a whole lot of work. I think they're going to need to make clear on what the money is being spent. I might have gone with a slightly lower number. I had that conversation with them. This is the number they went at. I think they would suggest that their polling and others said that people, kind of said, well, if you're going to do a $200 million increase, there's not that much difference if you do a $400 million type of bond election to help support facilities in the Kansas City School District. I think this is going to be important, but I think the most important question will be this. Kansas City has invested in its schools in the past. Any of us who were here around for the desegregation era know that we put more than $1 billion into our schools, and I don't think the results were as meritorious as they needed to be. I think we need to have a 21st century conversation as to how this makes schools better, how this makes Kansas City attractive, and how this creates more options for families of all walks of life in Kansas City proper.
And, trusting the people who are in charge of the money, because right now, as you noted, the annual budget's about $210 million, and that's about $15,000 per pupil right now with the Kansas City Public Schools. So it's not like they're skimping as is. I mean, is it fair to say they're not exactly skimping right now? So how is this money going to be spent, and how will it be spent efficiently and better?
I think that, first of all, they're already promising a much clearer dashboard as to where money is being spent. There's a great deal more transparency with this modern iteration of the Kansas City School Board and its leadership. I think that's positive. You have seen them root out, I think, a lot of the administrative challenges we saw for generations. And look, when I was a kid, the Kansas City School District seemed to have a new superintendent every 2 years, a new controversy every 2 years. There was all of that noise that was surrounding it. I think if you look at leadership now, if you look at enrollment growth, if you look at the quality of teachers that they're recruiting, you are seeing outstanding progress having been made over the last decade in the Kansas City Public Schools. And so I think that certainly there's going to be a trust issue, but I know this. Good government can actually get good things done. And in the same way that I know there are a lot of people in Kansas City who want us to spend even more money on the police and building jails and all those sorts of issues, if we have a bunch of crummy schools, if we don't have opportunities for young people, and if we're telling a bunch of 12-year-olds that we're not really invested in your future or your education, all of the problems we're trying to do will just be exacerbated, and we'll be back on the Pete Mundo show 5 years from now saying, we got to build another jail. We got to do this, that, and the other, because young people are going to be that important long term, and I think we can address the administrative side and continue to do that well.
Well, last thing, speaking of spending government money and government efficiency, I'm not sure how you feel about Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, but I saw some speculation on our friend Tony Kansas City's website that maybe the South Loop Park project that has been long ballyhooed could be basically DOA. I mean, it already struggled to get through the Biden administration, but it may have no chance now for federal funding. How do you feel about a project like that and whether or not it really has any chance of federal funding moving forward?
I was mayor, as you remember, for a part of the Trump administration. We did incredibly well with our streetcar investment, which to some could be seen as a vanity project, but the Trump Federal Transit Administration, the Trump U.S. DOT, saw that it was very valuable. I expect that to continue to be a priority for our United States senators, our United States representatives. And, I was thinking about another big project we've talked about, reconnecting communities, fixing the lights, likely taking them out on 71 Highway through southeast Kansas City. I've had conversations not just with Emmanuel Cleaver on that, but also Mark Alford and others. And a whole lot of your listeners who come into Kansas City from Harrisonville, Raymore, and Belton each day know it's important. So we're going to need to do the work to share why our infrastructure projects are important. But what I've heard from President Trump and what I saw from President Trump during the 45 administration was that they will invest in infrastructure where necessary. We look forward to working with them and their leaders to ensure all those good projects get done.
Well, he does like building. That is very true. All right, Mayor Lucas, thank you for the time. Always appreciate it. And have a great day. Thanks so much.
All right. I'll see you at the NWSL Championship. Enjoy the weekend, everybody.
That's right. Well, no one gave me a ticket, but I guess he could text me an invite after the show or something. You going, Mark? The NWSL Championship?
Sadly, I haven't been to any of the games this year. I kind of got priced out.
The Current aren't playing, though, right? They got knocked out.
No.
Okay. Do we know who's
It's Orlando
playing?
against Washington.
Okay. Orlando against Washington.
1-2 in the seedings.
Is that Washington, D.C. or Washington
Yes, sir.
State? Okay. All right. So all their fans will be out here in Kansas City. Maybe they can help get that power and light number up to 6 million by themselves over the next few days.